Wow, you're such a great scientist. I really love how you're doing that task so well.
Thanks, I guess. Great scan. You put on a few pounds, though?
That's rude.
My fellow colored blob, you could have been anywhere on the ship right now, but you're here in the cafeteria. Are you ready for an emergency meeting? The issue on the table. White was killed. Also, Pink was apparently dead somewhere. Blue is accusing Red of being imposter because she saw you doing something suspicious. Now, Red, explain yourself.
Ooh, relax, guys. I was just completing my task. And I was just in the middle of throwing out the garbage before the first death. It's okay. I will further justify myself. Hello guys, welcome to chapter 9, Blurring the Internal-External Distinction. I hope you guys will stay focused till the end of presentation so you won't blur what is the chapter 9 all about. Before we go further in this chapter, let's look at the division of internal-external distinction. First, internal distinction. It is consisting of a linguistic framework and observations related to that framework, which means we only look or refer to the written framework and only observe from that framework. It can be evaluated without having to observe the world, which is observation from experiment. So, internal distinction can be evaluated by studying books, previous research, facts, and etc. Well, it contradicts with the external distinction. External distinction is concerning practical questions about the utility of that framework, which means we need to do a practical framework not only based on the theories or previous research if we want to know or answering a question. In other words, we need to find an evidence to support by doing experiment or observe from the surrounding. That is why it is relevant to the theories relation to the world that require observation for their evaluation. So, external distinction require us to conduct an experiment and make our own observation or just make an observation from our surrounding. For more understanding, let's look at the example of internal and external distinction. First, example of internal distinction. If you want to learn about photosynthesis, you can just learn it from the previous research or reading a book. While for external distinction, if you want to learn about photosynthesis, you can conduct an experiment and make your own observation. Now, we know that what are internal distinction and external distinction. So, what about internal-external distinction? Internal-external distinction is the combination of internal and external distinction. Consideration of external features are inconclusive without the complement of internal evaluations. That is why we need both internal and external features. Justification of a theory would be a combination of a theory-to-theory relation and theory-to-world relation. This match the internal and external distinction where we use the observation from previous research or scientific theories and require an experiment to make our own observation. So, what is justification of a theory? Don't worry, it will be explained by other members. Justifying theory by comparing it to observation is an internal activity. It means that internal distinction is being applied if we want to justify a theory by comparing it to another theory. I hope you guys are crystal clear with the internal-external distinction. Now, we proceed with the predicament. The predicament described as the character, status or classification assigned by a prediction. Or in other words, it is all about human prediction. When doing an experiment and turn out our hypothesis is something wrong, then the predicament will take place. The predicament are undescribed, ineffable but certain, and beyond accountability, because there are no direct access to information on the truth or falsity of the theoretical claims made, and there are always an informational gap between the object of theories and the evidence used to verify the theories. So, here are the role of justification, where it will justify a theory or a claims made to be true or false by intervening the internal and external distinction. Are you guys still okay? It's okay. Let's look at the first example about predicament. All of us may check the weather before max plan. But have you ever wondered how we can tell if it will rain before it happens? Sometimes we see the clouds turn to dark, but the cloud never tells us when will it rain. It can be rain, it can also be a sunny day, or suddenly a storm. So how does the weather application on our phone tell us if it will rain tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or next week? Yes, thanks to scientists called the meteorologists, who are always making predictions about what the weather will do for today and the next few days. First, the meteorologists will use a radar, which is a type of tool that can show what is happening in the sky, even things that are far away and would be hard to see with our eyes. It gives us clues with different colors on the radar picture that show us where it's raining and how hard it's raining. Second, the meteorologists will use satellite, which is computers sent into space that can take pictures of the Earth and see the cloud from above, including which way they are moving and how fast they are moving. Third, the meteorologists look at the pattern for the previous years and the previous days. Meteorologists also use facts. So, what I'm going to conclude here is the prediction of weather forecasts by meteorologists are always true. How? By connecting or combination of the internal and external distinction. By looking at this summarization, you can now know that the prediction on weather forecasts are always true. Now, let's move on to the second example.
A strong prediction is something that you can back up with observations and with patterns that you've noticed. You can also research and gather information to help come up with a strong prediction. I'm doing my science project about things that sink or float. I wonder if an egg will sink or float. I know that eggs are light. A beach ball is really light and it floats. A rubber duck is also light and it floats too. So, I predict that an egg will float because it's light and light things float. How do you test your prediction? A hypothesis is a strong prediction that you can test. I'm going to plan an experiment to test my hypothesis. Write your prediction and list the steps in your experiment to test it. Now it's time to gather the materials you need for your experiment. I'll need a bowl, water, and a measuring cup to measure the water. I'll also need my notebook to record my data or information. Oh, right! I need an egg. Actually, I need a few eggs. It's important to do an experiment several times so you can look for any patterns. Cool! This egg floats. This egg sinks. This egg sinks too. This is why you need to do an experiment a few times. Don't worry, Moby. It's okay if your predictions aren't correct. Some of the most important discoveries were made by people whose predictions weren't always correct. It just means you have to gather more information, or even change your experiment, and test your prediction again. I need to read more about eggs. Thanks, Moby. This book explains that over time, the liquid inside eggs turns into a gas and escapes through the shell. Then air from the outside comes into the egg. So an older egg floats because it has more air in it. A fresher egg will sink because it has less air in it.
Here is the summarization of the video. That's all from my part, hoping that you guys are clear and understand my explanation. Well, I think you are the imposter. White and pink. You killed them. Do you, Orange?
Oh, wait. I am not an imposter, Red. I will justify myself too. Let me explain justification as coherence. So, in order to solve the predicament in the process of making the theory, we need to make a justification. First of all, what is justification? It is an action of showing something to be right or reasonable. In the other words, justification is set of reasons. For example, why the employer fired an employee? Because the employee involved in corruption cases. So, because of the reason, the action from the employer is explained and acceptable. So, in this case, how can we make a justification about the certain theory? Dickens said that we need to gather the evidence required as much as possible by competing definitions of what counts as a legitimate and worthwhile approach to the investigation. We cannot set aside all our other beliefs while we evaluate some particular belief. We must rely on some beliefs to evaluate others. Why we need to do that? Because we need to make a finding that can be assessed in relation to the theoretical perspective from which it derives and to which it may contribute. Moreover, it must be remembered that the data collected on the field are not intrinsically right or wrong. Rather, they are more or less useful according to the researcher's situation. So now, what should we do again with all the set of reasons that we have got? We can use coherence system. What is coherence? Stern said that coherence is the regress of justification problem, as it is a test of truth. Coherence can be achieved when sentences or ideas or theories from various sources are connected and flow together smoothly. If they do cohere or agree to a large extent, then we tend to think that the information is credible. But what if people make an information without coherence? It may inhibit the people's ability to understand the ideas and main points of the information. Suppose, however, that there has been a robbery. To get an unbiased view on who might have committed a crime, you decide to consult 4 different witnesses. Suppose that the first 2 witnesses both claim that Steve who did it, the third witness that Steve, Martin, or David did it, and the fourth witness that Steve, John, or James did it. Which pair of statements is the more coherent? That delivered by the first 2 sources or that delivered by the last 2 sources? After all, unlike the last 2 witnesses, the first 2 say exactly the same thing, so that the level of agreement is higher. And furthermore, we also can see that Steve was mentioned in every claim. This means that there are coherence between all the informations. So then, we can make a coherent conclusion, which is Steve is the culprit. And again, according to coherentism, the beliefs we should have are the ones that fit together into the best overall system of beliefs. And these justified beliefs get their justification by cohering with the other beliefs in this system. So, I hope everyone are clear about the explanation. But for more detailed explanation about the coherence, let's watch the video provided.
So we talked a bit about foundationalism. We saw that foundationalism does offer a potential solution to regress ad infinitum, because foundationalism sets certain beliefs as core beliefs within your belief system that are thought to not need any further justification by other beliefs. Then the rest of your beliefs are justified from those foundational beliefs. We saw as well that foundationalism has its problems. One problem is just the problem of sextus. If there is no foundation to your foundation, then why is your foundation itself accepted? Another is the difficulty of actually inferring from that core set of beliefs the other beliefs that are required. Oftentimes it seems that a much broader background of beliefs is needed to infer the diverse set of beliefs that I have. Now, as Souza points out in his discussion, these problems with foundationalism have made many philosophers suggest that perhaps coherence theory is a better theory. Coherence theory is the theory that beliefs are justified because they cohere together and support each other as part of the best system of my beliefs. Belief then, according to Souza in the coherence theory, is more like a raft. Right? A raft is made up of many parts that cohere together. If you ask someone what's the foundation of your raft, the answer is that it has no foundation. Any individual part could be removed, the raft would still hold together, and it could still be rebuilt. We saw that with a traditional method, we keep running through these claims. Each claim requires further justification, which itself requires justification, which requires further justification, and so on. But the coherence theorist will say belief shouldn't be seen in the same way. Instead, if you're evaluating some belief, you should look at all the beliefs that relate to that one belief and see how your belief system itself is a set of interrelated beliefs. If you have some belief that isn't related to your others and stands alone, that's a belief that should be rejected. If there's some belief that is intimately tied with everything else that you believe, then this belief is one that is likely to be accepted and kept, even if things on the periphery of your belief system turn out to be false. And this makes it clear why coherence theory can be seen as a theory that defeats hypothesis, because every belief in my system of beliefs as a coherence theorist is supported by other beliefs. If there's a belief that doesn't relate to any of my other beliefs or contradicts them, then that belief shouldn't be accepted within the system, and as a result, all beliefs mutually reinforce each other. And so this is how coherentism is meant to work. The fact is that I have many beliefs about science, about my mind, about religion, psychology, pets, morality, and these beliefs should be working together to mutually support each other. So the positive point, as far as building up my belief system, is just that my belief system should be built up so that I ensure that all my beliefs mutually support each other. The negative point, as in when should a belief be removed from the system, well, I should throw out those beliefs that are incompatible with my more coherent system. So what might this look like in practice? Well, for the positive point, I could start stating those specific beliefs about what I've learned from science, what I've learned from studying my own personality, what I've learned from religious experience or psychological insight, and I can knit these together into something that makes sense. On the negative side, if I was wondering whether my cat might be actually an alien super being, well, I would have to dismiss that view because it doesn't fit into the rest of my rationally consistent system. So coherence theory can be seen as an advance on foundationalism because no beliefs are left unjustified.
Thank you, Orange. In avoiding suspicions, I will justify myself by explaining the process of justification in science. Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. I will continue the presentation with the process of justification in science. But before that, can you perhaps identify the difference between explanation and justification? Yes? No? Don't worry, it's okay. We try to make it simple so that we can all understand well. Now, let's go by the definition on what the explanation is. For your information, explanation is a statement that is constructed to clarify why something happens. We can say that the explanation comes from the observation that we made on a situation, and it is basically from what we can see. Since it is merely based on our observation, this is why the explanation is said to be plain, simple, and direct. But what about justification? Well, justification is a way of explaining why something happens. The keyword here is the way of explaining, meaning that we want to come up with the reason on why something happens. Before that, we have to understand that a justification cannot come alone without proof and evidence. This means if you are trying to justify something without proof and evidence, then your justification is said to be invalid. From this, we can understand the importance of having the proof and evidence when making justification, which it helps us to convince something to be true or false. Some of you may still not clear enough on the difference between explanation and justification. Let's look at an example, which in fact a picture. Consider yourself witnessing a robbery incident. Can you come up with your own explanation why this incident happened? And can you justify why the man right here is the real thief? Alright, we can come with the explanation that we can see a suspicious man wearing a dark clothes and he has an average height. So we just make a very simple and direct explanation just now. But how can you justify that the man is the real thief? Of course, like I said earlier, we should provide proof and evidence. The example proof and evidence that we can come up to justify he is the thief is the stolen goods was found to be at his own house, and before this, the man was found to be a convicted thief and have a criminal record for that. So the stolen goods is considered as the external distinction, and the criminal record is considered as the internal distinction. By having both internal and external distinction, we can justify and convince everyone else that the man is the real thief. So the next video will be just an extra example about the difference between explanation and justification.
All right, now I want to draw a distinction between something called an explanation and something called a justification. And I'm going to do this for two reasons. One is we just told you there's something called the reason rule, and we actually use the words reason and the word why and the word because in two different ways in English. We mean them both for an explanation and a justification. So I think that can just be a little bit confusing. But also, teachers have told us multiple times that when they're giving students essays and they want students to make arguments, a lot of times their students are just giving them plot summary, they're giving an explanation of why something happened, when really they want their students to give them more clear argument. In other words, they want them to give justification. So hopefully this distinction will be helpful. All right, so here's a statement. Nate drank coffee this morning. Why? Why did Nate drink coffee this morning? What was the reason? Well, because Nate is addicted to caffeine. So that's the explanation or the cause of why Nate drank coffee this morning. But why should you believe this? What's a reason to believe it? Well, because there's photo evidence. So you hear how we use those words, reason and why and because. We use them in two different ways. I know it's a little bit subtle, so here's a way of looking at it. An explanation answers the question, why is this true? And the answer is like the cause of why it happened. So an explanation is often the cause of something happening. Whereas a justification answers the reason rule question, which is why I believe this is true. And the answer is often evidence that something's true. And that evidence can take the form of like the results of something happening, but it's something that you can observe. It's more like proof, right? So justification is a request for proof. Explanation isn't that kind of thing. Let's look at some more examples. So from literature, Lady Macbeth has a guilty conscience. Why? What is the cause? What's the reason why Lady Macbeth has a guilty conscience? Explanation. Well, she helped to mastermind the plot to murder King Duncan. Okay, but why should you believe that she has a guilty conscience? And I think this is where you might be wanting students to answer the question of, give me an argument, give me some textual evidence. And here's the justification. She sleepwalks through the castle saying, out, damn spot, out, I say. And she's talking about Duncan's blood. So this answers the question why you should believe that she has a guilty conscience. Okay, from history. During the Civil War, many poor people in the North resented the draft. Why? Why do they resent the draft? Well, explanation. Wealthy people could opt out of the draft by paying $300, which I guess was a lot of money at the time. So that's more like the background or the narrative summary of why they resented the draft. Okay, but why should you believe that they resented the draft? Prove it, right? Give me justification. Well, the New York City draft riots of 1863 lasted several days and killed over 100 people. So that was evidence of the draft, and we see that because it was the result of the resentment. So that was proof. All right, so hopefully this distinction was helpful and we have given you practice exercises. At the end of the day, we're just trying to focus on the reason rule question, which is why believe this?
Theory in science can either be justified or unjustified. In science, we can only believe the theory that is proven and justified to be true and discard the theory that is proven otherwise. Thus, the process of justification in science is regarded to be vital to help justifying the theories. First of all, the process of justification in science is the standard responsibility in what to believe, and it must be internal to the community undertaking. For example, we have been familiar with the theory of flat Earth, which has been going for debate for ages. In order to justify what we believe to be true, we have to refer the previous research and experiment, as well as published books and facts. For example, NASA has used an equipment or tool named geodesy to measure the Earth's shape, gravity, and rotation. Geodesy provides accurate measurement that shows the Earth is round, or to be exact, a sphere. Pictures from the satellite also show the Earth is round and it is not flat. Hence, we cannot say the theory of flat Earth is justified, and therefore we cannot even convince ourselves or other people that it was true. Other than that, the process of justification in science must be within the theoretical system of science. For our information, theory can neither be hunch nor guess. This means, if we want to justify a scientific theory to be true, we have to start from the very beginning, such as making observation and hypotheses, conducting the experiment, tabulating data, and analyzing the results before coming to the justification that the scientific theory is true. This is because conducting the experiment can give us the data and result to be as our evidence when making justification. Besides, process of justification is not matter. This is because the process of justification itself came from our own justification, which is our own thinking skill based on what proof do we have. In a simple word, when we want to make the process of justification, it still involves or requires the process of our thinking skills. Of course, in order to make justification, we need to carry out experiments to gather proof and evidence. But after all, without our thinking skill to provide reason, we cannot succeed to make the justification. Hence, this is why they say the process of justification in science is not matter. Last but not least, process of justification in science is not for social reason and moral reason. First of all, we need to understand what is social reasoning and moral reasoning. Social reasoning involves the ability to draw inferences about others' intention and action in order to regulate one's own behaviors. It is within social expectation and social norms. The example situation is an employer fired an employee and he provides evidence why he behaves like that. Other than that, moral reasoning can be defined as a process in which an individual determines what is right and wrong by using logic. The example that we obviously see is the issue between Israel and Palestine. As we all know, Israel military has killed children in Palestine by stating that it was right action for them and saying it was just for a mere self-defense. However, most of people in the world think differently. This is because we cannot kill children in a war. From this, we can see that different people have different logic in determining what is true or false. Because of this, it is subjected to bias, since people will believe things they want to believe by using their logic. So in this case, some may say what Israel has done is reasonable, while some may not. Hence, this is why it is said process of justification in science is not the same as for social reasons and moral reasons, since there is no scientific process being conducted. So we cannot say the process of justification by using moral and social reasoning can be accepted in justifying a scientific theory. I think that's all from me. Just a little conclusion on my part. I do hope every one of you can understand the differences between explanation and justification, as well as clear about the process of justification in science.
That was a real nice explanation. Mhm. But before we making any justification, we need to know the method to justify. Let me explain the method to justify scientific theory.
Scientific theory is very important. It is well supported. It has a very good chance of being a correct explanation for events in nature because it is a broad explanation. It can explain many observations and pieces of evidence. In other words, it can help connect and make sense of many phenomena in the natural world. So, how to justify scientific theory? There are two methods to justify scientific theory. First, by connecting one theory or belief and another in order to validate whether the theory is acceptable or not. It means here that the theory must be coherent. Second, it must be evaluated on the basis of available information. It means here that the theory must be assessed using accessible information. To give you a better understanding about method to justify scientific theory, I have provided some examples. Example 1. A mother brings her young son, Adam, to the doctor. The child complains that he does not feel well. Upon examination, the doctor finds that the boy has a fever, red spots on his skin, and feels itchy. Suppose the doctor also recalls that many children at Adam's school have had measles. The doctor forms the belief that Adam has the measles. First step in justifying scientific theory is we must find belief that fits or coheres with another belief. And the belief can be internal and external. It also can be only external. In this situation, the doctor believes Adam has measles because there are two external distinctions he found in this situation. The first external distinction is Adam has the symptoms of measles, and the second external distinction is the doctor recalls that many children at Adam's school have had measles. To summarize, the belief of the doctor is justified when all of his other beliefs fit together. For example 2, similarly, suppose a detective forms the belief that Smith stole some missing object on the basis of his beliefs that there are witnesses saw Smith in the area at the time of the crime, there is Smith's criminal record for stealing, and that the stolen object was found in Smith's room. His belief that Smith stole the object fits or coheres with the rest of his beliefs. In this situation, the basic belief is the detective forms the belief that Smith stole the missing object. Why he forms the belief that Smith stole the missing object? The reason is there are three other beliefs supporting his basic beliefs, which is one internal distinction and two external distinction. The internal distinction is there is Smith's criminal record for stealing, and the first external distinction is there are witnesses saw Smith in the area at the time of the crime. The second external distinction is the stolen object was found in Smith's room. The fact that the detective basic belief fits or coheres with the rest of his beliefs seems to make it reasonable to hold that belief. This means the detective belief is justified.
Coherentism and the epistemic regress problem. One reason why studying the epistemic regress problem is important is because it teaches us something about the structure of justification. According to foundationalism, justification has a linear structure. Each belief is justified by another belief that is justified by another belief in a straight line that terminates with a basic belief that does not depend on other beliefs for evidential support. According to coherentism, by contrast, justification has a holistic, nonlinear structure. Each belief is justified by its relationships to other beliefs that fit together like a puzzle or support one another like the different threads of a spider's web. For this reason, as we will see, coherentism tries to solve the epistemic regress problem in a different way than foundationalism. Coherentists argue that being justified requires having a coherent system of beliefs. Your system of beliefs is coherent when your beliefs fit together in the right sort of way. Here's an example that illustrates this very intuitive idea. Harry has a generally hard-headed attitude concerning the effectiveness of medications. He always wants to see the evidence before he believes they will work. He rejects outlandish claims based on individual testimonials. He is sensibly dubious about the alleged miracle cures touted in advertisements. But Harry is starting to lose his hair, and he's quite upset about this. One day, he hears someone say that Miracle-Gro cures baldness, and he believes this. It probably seems to you like Harry has made a mistake here. Harry shouldn't believe that Miracle-Gro cures baldness. Coherentism can explain why. Harry's belief that Miracle-Gro cures baldness doesn't fit together with his other beliefs in the right sort of way. For example, Harry's belief that Miracle-Gro cures baldness is inconsistent with his belief that he should believe in the effectiveness of some medical treatment only if there is good clinical evidence that it's effective, and with his belief that there is no good clinical evidence that Miracle-Gro is an effective treatment for hair loss. The inconsistency between these beliefs and Harry's belief that Miracle-Gro cures baldness makes his belief system incoherent. His belief that Miracle-Gro cures baldness is unjustified because it doesn't cohere with his system of beliefs. Now, coherence comes in degrees. In other words, a belief system can be more or less coherent. When Harry forms the belief that Miracle-Gro cures baldness, the inconsistency between this belief and Harry's other beliefs makes his belief system less coherent. By contrast, something that makes a belief system more coherent is when some beliefs provide explanations for other beliefs. Suppose that Harry believes that all of the plants in his garden are wilted, that plants wilt when they don't get enough water, and that it has not rained in a long time. Harry's belief that plants wilt when they don't get enough water, and his belief that it has not rained in a long time, explain why all of the plants in his garden are wilted. The explanatory relations between Harry's beliefs makes his belief system more coherent than if he did not have any beliefs about rain and plant health. Coherentists argue that if removing some belief from your system of beliefs makes your belief system less coherent, then that belief is justified. For example, removing Harry's belief that plants wilt when they don't get enough water makes Harry's belief system less coherent. So Harry is justified in believing that plants wilt when they don't get enough water. Similarly, if adding some belief to your belief system makes your belief system more coherent, then you are justified in believing it. For example, adding the belief that rain provides plants with water makes Harry's belief system more coherent. Therefore, he's justified in believing that rain provides plants with water. By contrast, if removing some belief from your system of beliefs makes your belief system more coherent, then that belief is not justified. For example, removing the belief that Miracle-Gro cures baldness from Harry's system of beliefs makes his belief system more coherent. So his belief that Miracle-Gro cures baldness is not justified. Similarly, if adding some belief to your system of beliefs makes your belief system less coherent, then you are not justified in believing it. For example, when Harry forms the belief that Miracle-Gro cures baldness, this makes his belief system less coherent. Again, this means that Harry is not justified in believing that Miracle-Gro cures baldness. What is the coherentist solution to the epistemic regress problem? Well, the coherentist points out that the epistemic regress problem presupposes that justification has a linear structure. In other words, the regress gets going because one belief needs to be justified by another, and by another in an endless line of beliefs. But the coherentist denies that justification is linear in this way. Instead, she says that justification has a holistic structure. All of our beliefs are interdependent. There is no need for an endless supply of justified beliefs because your beliefs are justified when they fit together in a coherent way. Thus, the coherentist stops the epistemic regress from getting started in the first place.
All of us have justified ourselves, except you, Purple. Do you have anything to confess?
Seems like you are accusing me now, Blue. Okay, if that's so, let's hear out my justification.
Okay, me, Purple, will explain method justifying theories. What is method justifying theories? Method justifying theories is a testing by comparison to other theories and by comparison to theory-sponsored evidence. What does it mean? Okay, now listen carefully. Method justifying theories is where we compare one theory with another theory which it is a previous theory to find coherence. We observe whether both theories can work together in order to prove that both theories are true, or they can be contradict to each other, so that we can say either one of the theory is true or not. So, what is difference between method of justifying scientific theory and method of justifying theories? Method of justifying scientific theories include both internal and external distinction, while method justifying theories only include internal distinction. Now, let's take a look for example 1. We make a comparison between two theories, which theory 1 is about an astronaut returning from a space journey at relativistic speeds will upon return be younger than his or her twins who stay on Earth. With theory 2, the faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. We can say that this theory 1 and theory 2 has coherence between one another, as we can conclude that the speed of an object through space reflects how much of its motion through time is being diverted. In theory 2 shows that the speed of space station is faster than the gravity of Earth, and because of that, the time will slow down. Like speed of the spaceship through the space make the time for the astronaut slower than the time on Earth. Therefore, that is why the astronaut is younger than his or her twin when returned to the Earth. Let's move to example 2. Now, we make a comparison of theory 1 in which green plants need to be placed in a place that exposed to light so that it can grow well. We compare with a theory 2. A carbohydrate process during photosynthesis is mostly used by plants as an energy source to build leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds. We can see that both of the theory shows they have coherence to one another. And based on the coherence between theory 1 and theory 2,
we can come up with one concrete justification that photosynthesis occurs when green plants use the energy of light to convert carbon dioxide and water into carbohydrates. It proves that the theory of green plants need to be placed in a place that exposed to the light is true. This is because light is an essential for the plant for photosynthesis. Now, let's take a look for the last example. This last example gives a result for incoherence. First, we compare theory 1 in which soil fertility refers to the ability of soil to sustain agricultural plant growth, with theory 2, a carbohydrate process during photosynthesis is mostly used by plants as an energy source to build leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds. This theory 2, where it is about photosynthesis, seems like the example 2 that is given before. Now, try to find the connection of this theory. Cannot, right? We can see that the objective of both theory is toward plant growth, but we cannot find the coherence from both theory as it does not relate or connected to each other. Theory 2 is about the process of plant use sunlight, water, carbon dioxide to create oxygen and energy in the form of sugar, while theory 1 is talk about soil fertility. Therefore, this example gives the result of incoherence where theory 2 cannot support theory 1 to be true. For the last part of this chapter, accomplishment of justification. Accomplishment of justification is what we can get from justification. First, we can find high degree of coherence among the factors. Next, the process and result of justification are all internal to one's cognitive awareness. And lastly, it is humanly accessible. In conclusion, whatever you use to prove your theories to justify the belief in their truth, it must be information that is accessible in the sense of being within the domain of human awareness. We must be aware, or at least potentially aware, of the justifying factors used to establish the credibility of scientific theories and to keep science on a responsible, truth-conductive method.
Counting down seconds till the vote drops. Hey, listen, I'll keep trying to rhyme until the time stops.
Time's up, everybody. Now please cast your vote.
You don't have the votes. You don't have the votes. Ha 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 ha. You're gonna need majority approval and you don't have the votes. Such a blunder sometimes, it makes me wonder why I even bring the thunder.
Why he even brings the thunder?